All right. I believe. Hello, everybody. And let's see if that does it. Yes, that does it. We're back. All right. Okay, so John Marks says, even at 6-4, did anyone give the Raiders a chance? John Marks, I had the Raiders penciled in as the wild card winner, one of the two wild card winners. So, yeah, I mean, I was holding on for dear life, still am. But let's see what Eric Powell says. You hear Gumble call the Chargers the Clippers? Yeah, I did hear that. This has been that's hilarious, man. Did you hear that, Joseph? Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
Wow, that's
No.
hilarious. This has been a comedy of errors weekend. I was watching the visiting Houston Texans against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I swear Rich Eisen kept calling Deshaun Watson Jameis Winston. He would say, Winston, back to throw. I said, wait a minute, Watson. So I wrote on Twitter, Rich Eisen called Jameis Winston, Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston. And then I wrote, and he did it again. And he did it again. And so it's something in the water. Maybe it's all these Christmas parties. Maybe it's something connected to that.
Yeah. I don't think they're drinking water.
No. Let me see what the NFL is saying about these playoff possibilities. The Chiefs snag.
Real quick, do you remember what you predicted when we had that April prediction after the draft? The viewers predicted what the Raiders would be the record.
I thought I predicted 9-7.
Yeah, and I predicted 7-9. So we're both kind of within that same ballpark.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're not too far off. I mean,
no.
I think this rate. I have to say this though. All right, the Raiders are lucky. The Chargers had a game plan that did not call for them to throw deep. Because if the Chargers had decided to bomb them like every other team has done, that game would have had a different outcome. As much as I believe the Raiders' defense has improved against the run, and I love that they're using the flex defense principles on first down. I like that. If you don't know what the flex defense is, the flex defense is a type of 4-3 defense created by and then popularized by Tom Landry, the late Tom Landry, when he was head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And what it does is to describe it very simply, is the flex defense is a zone defense against the run. The flex defense is a zone defense against the run that adjusts with respect to the strength of the offensive formation or whichever way they think the ball is going to go or some combination of both. It catapulted the Cowboys to have the best defense against the run perennially during the 70s when the run was the most common way of moving the football in the National Football League and football in general. So the Raiders used flex defense principles against the Chargers. I've never seen that before. It's like, whoa. They had the defensive, not both tackles, though, one tackle flexed. And the tackles had a 4-point stance. The flex is known for its 4-point stance. And then at the snap of the ball, they would go to attack an assigned gap interior, okay? And each one of them was heads up on the offensive lineman rather than being spread out. Modern NFL defenses, if you will, have, in some cases, the defensive ends over a tight end rather than a tackle. And they'll have a wide tackle, the tackle wider than the guard, which to me leaves a lot of bubbles or what are called holes. That's not the flex. And I was very pleased to see the Raiders use it, and it worked. It really worked. It is playoff picture. Let me go to the playoff picture to explain to you what the NFL is telling us. And by the way, I have an announcement to make. Zenny 62 Media has been granted week of Super Bowl game credentials for Miami. Super Bowl 54. Yes. So basically, I get to cover everything except the game itself, which is fine, and come back and watch it with my mom. But Zenny 62 Media headed to Miami to cover Super Bowl week festivities and activities. Very excited about that. Okay. And thank you to the NFL. Now, okay, it says here, conference. Now, what does it say? In the hunt. We're still in the hunt, folks. It says Steelers are still in the hunt, followed by the Raiders, and unbelievably, the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns. One moment, folks. I need to check something. Hold on a second. Hold that thought about. Go ahead. You were saying?
And CBS Sports, it says what needs to happen in Week 17: the Raiders beat the Broncos, Ravens beat Steelers, Texans beat Titans, and Colts beat Jaguars. None of that is too insane. It's probably like a 20-1 money line parlay.
20-1.
That's
So say that one more
Sports.
time. Say that one more time.
It says, well, let me.
The Raiders need to win. We know that. The Raiders need to win.
It's probably like a 20-1 money line parlay. They're talking about, I guess, a betting line. And what needs to happen for Week 17.
So the Raiders need to win. They'll be 8-8.
Right. The Ravens need to beat the Steelers. The Texans need to beat the Titans, and the Colts need to beat the Jaguars.
The Texans need to beat the Titans.
Correct.
That is a tough
And the
game.
Colts got to beat the Jags. Yeah.
And is the Texans-Titans game at, where's that at? That's the question. If it's at Tennessee.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That doesn't say here. But
Okay, let me see here. Let's check the Week 16 games here. If the Texans have to travel, it's in Houston? Wow. Okay, John Akala, how you doing? It's in Houston. Thanks, John Marks. It's in Houston. So that means, and yet the Texans have to win?
yes.
Okay, so that means the Raiders' chances are pretty good if the Texans have to win. And then it's a pretty fair bet the Ravens are going to clobber the
Beat the
Steelers.
Steelers.
Yeah. Okay.
Now the only one that sticks out to me is the Colts have to beat the Jaguars.
I gotta make fun of this. There's a person who calls themselves Positive Vibes who comes here to send a negative vibe. That is, you won't win. I think you need to change your name, Positive Vibes, to Negative Vibes. That would be more appropriate. Okay, moving forward. Let me read the comments here, since that's our thing, as we read the comments of everybody. And I'm a bit behind in doing that. So let me go back a bit in time, if you will, and read the comments. There are a lot of them. John Mark says, greetings. John Mark says, great to see you here, my man. John Mark says, will the Raiders, or asks, he says, will the Raiders make the playoffs? He says, highly doubt it. John Marks then follows up. Tennessee has the 6th seed sewn up with a victory over the Texans next week. Then he goes on to say that SF 49ers can lock up the NFC West with a victory over the Hawks next week in Seattle. I personally don't think that's happening. I cannot see Seattle losing to the 49ers after being embarrassed by the Arizona Cardinals. I just cannot see that. In fact, arguably, one could say, oh, the Seahawks were overlooking the Cardinals and just waiting, salivating over the opportunity to have the 49ers in their backyard. Ezekiel says Houston will beat Tennessee, Baltimore will beat Pittsburgh, and Indianapolis will beat Jacksonville. Oakland will beat Denver. And John Marks follows all possible. And John Marks then says Tennessee holds tiebreaker over Oakland. So meaning if Tennessee gets in, we don't get in? That's what that means? So Houston must beat Tennessee for us to get in. Wandell says, good win today. Carr looked good. Defense looked good enough. And I still say that the Raiders defense is very fortunate that A, they used a better design run defense, and B, the Chargers did not throw deep. John Marks says, who holds tiebreaker between New Orleans and Green Bay? Do you know the answer to that, Joseph? I need to check that one.
No, I don't know.
Eric Powell says, as crappy as Raiders have played and still have a chance blows my mind. Mine too. Probably a lot
Well,
of
that
people.
just tells you how weak the AFC West is.
Yeah, yeah. Cheese says Philip Rivers is done in San Diego. I mean, even the wide receivers are getting frustrated. Neil says, is it already over? No, it's not. John Mark says,
You know,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I said the greatest thing I heard on 2 broadcasts was the LA Chargers are only the LA Chargers by name, because every team that goes there, it's a home game for the opposing team.
Yeah, and there were nothing but Raider fans.
Today was no exception. One of the sportscasters in today's broadcast says 95%, if not more, of all Raider fans, and of course, generationally, there is all local LA Raider fans there.
Yeah, did you notice?
So it was great to see. Obviously,
did you notice that Derek Carr got more love in Carson than he did in Oakland?
Yeah.
I mean, that was crazy. And so John Mark says, even at 6-4, did anyone give the Raiders a chance? I did. She says, Skip Bayless is going to be so mad tomorrow on Fox Sports. Dallas lost. Ha ha ha. Eric Powell says, you hear Gumble call the Chargers Clippers. We talked about that. John Collins says, hello. Looks like Renfro made a difference in Raiders passing attack. Yeah, he really did. Look, Hunter Renfro is the Raiders version of Julian Edelman. No question about it. He is, let me go a step further. He is the Raiders version of every slot wideout the Patriots have had since Wes Welker. I'll take it back that far. What do you think, Joseph?
Well, Renfro, I mean, he is fun to watch at the bare minimum. I mean, this guy has not the greatest speed, but he's relentless, and he keeps going. He figures out ways to get away from the defense. I mean, it's a great thing that we have Renfro, and hopefully he continues to build on that as he gets more acclimated to the Raiders' offense.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. And John Acala says, Eric Powell says 6-10 here. John Mark says, what are the chances the league tells the Chargers to go home to San Diego? Eric Powell follows 0. I will add this. Look, what are the Chargers doing in any other place than San Diego? If you think about the Chargers from a brand perspective, there's no other place that they have been able to take hold and establish any kind of raison d'etre than San Diego. Unlike the Rams, which have every logical reason to want to be in LA, they came from there, or the Raiders may be having a chance in Las Vegas because of the fan base, although I think it's risky, and the money that's spent. But the Chargers' move to Los Angeles was not done because they really wanted to be there. It was done because they weren't getting the kind of deal they wanted in San Diego. That's why.
And I could throw my 2 cents in there if you give me a few minutes there.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the Chargers, one thing that you may agree with, I truly believe Kroenke kept the Raiders from LA. He's good friends with Jerry Jones. They're billionaires. He knew very well that if the Raiders came to LA, they would be the second-tier team. Now, the reason why I say this is that you got to remember, I come from a generation that the Rams had already moved to Anaheim. And when you're in Anaheim, we don't consider you an LA team. And so there's a generation of fans that have never considered Rams an LA team. Because Anaheim, we consider that a whole other world. It's Orange County. They hate LA, Orange County. They're very snobbish. They never wanted anything to do with LA. And once the Rams went there, they ingratiated themselves with the Rams. If you go now, for example, if you drive around Anaheim, you'll see a lot of fans that have Angel stickers and Ram stickers. Now, here in LA, there's a big population, and maybe it.
I just heard something. Hold on.
Okay.
I don't know if there was a thunder here or... Wait a minute. That is. I'll be right back. I have to check something. I'll be right back. Keep it going, because if I have to call 911 or so, somebody. Hold on, I thought I heard something. Hold on.
All right. Well, for those, I guess, who are listening, my point was basically that there is a great population of Los Angeles that doesn't think of Rams as an LA team. Of course, the origins were there, but when the Raiders had its glory years when they were still in Los Angeles, they lost their privileges in LA. And so you do have a population of people that still don't consider the Rams an LA team. Now, for all intents and purposes, they do have the moniker of LA. And I would also suggest that they are much more of an LA team than the Chargers will ever be. And so, as I spoke to Zenny about this several times, is that the Chargers are going to have a hard time getting their foot in the door in terms of ingratiating themselves with the LA market. Their fan base will continue to be in San Diego. You look at the game, today's game, like I mentioned earlier, you have the sportscasters themselves say 95%, if not more, of the stadium were Raider fans, and they're all local fans. And so, having said that, the biggest disservice the NFL had did was not allowing the Raiders to move to Los Angeles. They'll be successful in Las Vegas, and I've said this over and over again, if they weren't able to stay in Oakland, obviously the place where they originated from, the second best place for them to be would have been Los Angeles. Would have been an easy fit to the city. It would have brought about the glory days. As I mentioned before, if anybody remembers, the last team to win a Super Bowl were the LA Raiders. The Rams can't say that. The Chargers will probably never say that. So let's hope that everything's okay with Zenny. And
yes, I'm
I
fine.
guess we could wait a few minutes before he gets on.
Yeah, everything's
I think
fine.
he's coming back on.
That was not an attempted prowl or anything. It was just my mother downstairs piddling around. She was in bed, so that's what happened. So no, everything's just fine. So I'm back.
And just FYI, I kind of went off and spoke a little bit while you were tending to your mom.
Oh, I appreciate that. So we have Cesar says the Raiders making the playoffs in their final season for a long while in Oakland will be the best Christmas present ever. And Dave Dola says, do you think Baltimore and Houston will play their starters next week? What do you think, Joseph?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the fact that.
Oh, and by the way, what were you saying while I was gone? What were you saying while I was gone? That if you want to continue your thought?
I just kind of kept on about how the Rams, for a generation of us, lost their LA privilege when they moved to Anaheim, and the reason why I say that is that for someone who grew up in the city of Los Angeles, that's a world away, and the fact that Orange County has this distaste for LA, including its residents, for the most part, Orange County has always been snobby, and they always kind of look down on Los Angeles and the people there. So when they left to Anaheim, there's a great population of Los Angeles residents that want nothing to do with the Rams. And just like in Oakland, the Raiders were the people's team.
Mm-hmm.
And it still is. I mean, look at the turnout in Carson. Now, let me preface this, because I know with my other videos, Eddie, I've always wanted to say, I'm never disparaging where the Raiders came from, but when I hear the media say that LA is not the Raiders market, they are not telling the truth. I would have loved the Raiders to stay in Oakland, but I've said it, and I said it a little while ago, is if they couldn't stay in Oakland, it would have been a natural fit for them to come into LA.
Yeah, it would have been. I think you were talking about that before I heard that rumble. It turned out to be on my mom opening the pantry, but that what was striking to me is that, and something I forgot, striking because I forgot it. I mean, I remember it. The simple fact of the matter is the way the NFL resolution was written, the Raiders and the Chargers were partnered, and the Chargers had the first option before the Raiders as to where to go.
And that had to do with the hatred towards the Raider ownership.
Right.
Because
and that's
Thanos is always kowtowed to the NFL.
Yeah, and that has to do, well, it is said, and I hate to repeat things that I'm not myself able to specifically confirm, but it is said that Mark is basically paying for the sins of his father. But I have the reason why I don't entirely agree with that is because of the turnover in ownership because of people who passed on or just simply changed ownership. Like, for example, Jerry Richardson doesn't own the Carolina Panthers anymore, okay? Dave Tepper does. Bob McNair sadly passed away. So there's change in the ownership ranks. We haven't even figured out, for example, with respect to the Bolins, who's really in charge. You know, that's been a mess. And talking about the Denver Broncos. And then, of course, they just got the whole issue straightened out with the Struck family, and who I had the pleasure of meeting in Nashville with respect to the Tennessee Titans. So it's hard for me to distill what seems to me to be a very complicated issue to, well, people didn't like his dad. I just, because it assumes that all those folks are still around and that there was never a way to resolve them. I look at this. First of all, Mark, I think what it was that Mark had to prove himself as a person who could run his organization. I think that was the big thing. And he made a lot of missteps early on. And I still think there's a part of him that is a bit too swashbuckling to avoid mistakes. For example, getting into the situation where he was relying on pay-as-you-go money for the bond issue, and if that bond issue money fell short, someone had to make it up. And since his attorney, Dan Ventrelli, had written his own signature in as the Raiders representing Stadco, the Stadium Corporation, guess who was responsible for that gap? Raiders is Stadco. So all of a sudden, the Raiders have to fill in that monetary gap. They turn around, they're going, and so they start cutting players. Specifically, they don't sign Amari Cooper, and they don't sign... Right. And so rather than admit the obvious to anybody who's really paying attention to the financial situation, they turn around and diss the guys out the door, which was the wrong thing to do. And that was Mark, okay? So, and then on top of that, he turned around, signed John Gruden to a $100 million contract. I was like, what? All right. And then he turned around before that, and he signed Derek Carter a huge contract, probably before he...
I think it was 125.
That was 135, I thought it was, something like that. But it set the market for a bit, rather than just... I thought he's overspent by $20 million myself. Okay? I mean, I could have justified $115 million. Anything north of $115, $105 million, I would have let him walk. I would have put him on a prove it and just said, hey, let's just go from there. Because I don't think he'd have realized that kind of deal anyplace else. Period. Okay? So, and I'm not saying anything against Derek Carr as a person. I think he's a fine person. From what I've seen, he just hasn't put up the numbers that stand out and say, all right, this guy can be the guy that I can win and take a Super Bowl with, okay? And people like him because he checks all the right marks in terms of his attitude, his faith, his love of people, his respect, his leadership. But there's that extra factor that's not there. And you can design it in by scheme, but the scheme has to be just so. Now, uh, so Mark has this tendency to really overspend, and it's caught up to them. But with respect to the league, uh, that
I
whole
just don't
deal.
think they have respect for him as much as they did his father. Because with Al Davis, they respected him. They probably didn't like him, but they respected him. And
Yeah,
I
no,
think
that's
the
true.
opposite is true with Mark Davis.
No, I think Mark got a lot of respect when he was able to get that $750 million deal from Sheldon Adelson. That turned a lot of heads. Okay, because
But then what happened when Adelson? He turned around and screwed Adelson over.
he turned around and screwed him over, right? And the thing about it is he time will tell how that pans out. My take on it, all
Well,
right, is that my take on it is that it was a bad thing to do because look, it was Robert Goldstein who was and is the chief operating officer for Las Vegas Sands, said to the Southern Nevada Tourism and Infrastructure Committee, he said that the Las Vegas Sands, well, not so much Las Vegas Sands, but Mr. Adelson, was going to basically pay for the cost overruns and stadium cost overruns with a blank check and any other. Oh yeah, infrastructure costs. He said that, and he said that before the Southern SNTIC, and I believe um, if memory serves, cost overruns. If memory serves, he said that in 2016 during just as things were beginning to wind down with respect to the SNTIC coming to a conclusion and recommendation, and that and they'd done a lot of getting rid of other partners. They pushed out Majestic, and I was trying to get Craig Cavalier to. I made a number of calls and I asked a number of questions. I was trying to get Craig Cavalier to explain why Majestic was out of the deal as a developer. I never got a call back. So there were a lot of problems there, but what they said specifically is we're going to write a blank that Sheldon Adelson was going to write a blank check, and I say all that to say this: if he had still been involved, the Raiders would not. In fact, here it is, August 28th, 2016. Adelson commits personal wealth to back stadium plan. And he had said right here, and this was, I can, get rid of the review journals. Yeah, there it is. Okay. This is by Rich Villada, and he says Las Vegas Sands Corporation Chairman and CEO Sheldon Adelson went to his board of directors this spring with a proposal to fund a 65,000 seats dome football stadium in Southern Nevada. His board turned him down, so he's willing to spend his own money to get the dome built, at least $650 million. And because the stadium's $1.9 billion financing plan calls for the use of $750 million in hotel room tax money, Adelson said he won't receive any return on his personal contribution. And I was actually told there's a catch to that, okay? And I was told that by, I can't say you told me that. The room tax money we're looking for is not coming to us. This will be a stadium authority, all right? He said it's a community effort. He said he basically basically that's when he made that it was a family decision. But he also said later, and this was Goldstein that said it on his behalf, that they would cover all stadium cost overruns and off-site infrastructure costs. That's what he said. And had they been in the deal to this day, okay, the sponsorship money problems that they're having, where they only have 9 founding partners rather than the 12 that Oakland Raider president Mark Bedane said was needed, would not have been an issue, because that gap would have been filled by Mr. Adelson's check. But the idea that Adelson said he didn't want anything from it, that's not true. And I was personally told that Adelson specifically said, in fact, that's why he walked away. He said that's why he walked away. He said, "Hey, look, he had said, okay, you just heard me say that Adelson said that he didn't want a dime from it, right? That's what he said, right? But then he turned around, okay, and he says that first of all, Mark Davis had screwed him, in my words, not his, okay? And that he, I'm trying to find exactly what he said. He wrote in his own publication, Review Journal, and it was on February 26th, 2017 that he said it. And he being Adelson, I was told specifically, had expected a return from revenue that he believed he was promised, okay? And he was incensed that the draft lease did not include Review Journal, did not include a percentage for him. And that's when they decided he said that they're gonna walk. And trying to find where, let's see here. Raiders owner lost a Vegas stadium deal. I wonder if they took that out. It's interesting here, because if that was taken out, what Mark Davis did, if that was taken out of the Review Journal, that in of itself is news. Because if the article I'm referring to is removed from the Review Journal, that would actually signal that the Raiders have somehow gained the Adelson family back in. Now here's...
Well, let me ask you a question, Zenny, for that.
Here it is. January 30th. Adelson's withdraw investment from proposed Raiders Stadium in Las Vegas. And the family of Las Vegas Sands Corporation, Chairman and CEO Stellan Adelson, has withdrawn as investors in a proposed $1.9 billion, 65,000-seat dome stadium intended to bring the NFL's Oakland Raiders to Southern Nevada. In a statement issued late Monday, Adelson said his family will, quote, no longer be involved in any facet of the stadium discussion, unquote. Adelson said he was surprised by the Raiders' submission of a proposed lease agreement to the Las Vegas Stadium Authority on Thursday, noting that it sent shockwaves through our community. It was certainly shocking to the Adelson family, the statement said. We were not only excluded from the proposed agreement, we weren't even aware of its existence. It's clear the Raiders have decided their path for moving to Las Vegas does not include the Adelson family, Adelson's statement said. So regrettably, we will no longer be involved in any facet of the stadium discussion. Adelson said that, quote, while this is not the result my family was hoping for, I am very appreciative of the countless people who have given considerable time and energy to this process, especially so many of our elected officials who have made this a top priority in Southern Nevada. A source close to Adelson said that when Raiders President Mark Bedane and Executive Vice President Dan Ventrelli were making a presentation to the authority board, Raiders owner Mark Davis was in Adelson's office negotiating with the family. Calls to Davis and Bedane were not immediately returned Monday, but the team issued a statement Monday evening. The Raiders deeply appreciate the efforts of the Adelson family to bring the Raiders to Las Vegas. We know this project could not have advanced to this point without them. The Raiders remain steadfast in honoring Mark Davis' commitment to Governor Brian Sandoval and the state of Nevada to pursue relocation to Las Vegas. And then they were skeptical about, Goldman Sachs, and of course Bank of America stepped in. And there are people who thought that Bank of America was, in a sense, a replacement for Shell and Adelson. And I don't care what certain people say, that you can't replace a guy who says, "Hey, look, I'm going to pay your stadium cost overruns and offsite infrastructure costs," because Elliot McCabe, but the Bank of America representatives that work with the representative that works with the NFL and funds stadiums via loans, like, for example, Atlanta, and most notably and most recently Las Vegas for $600 million, told me personally that the deal, he told me this personally at CES 2019 at the party I was at. He said that deal is basically pro forma. It's just like the one we did for Atlanta and others. We don't pay for anything other than what is offered. They have a credit facility, and that's it. They're not going to pay for cost overruns or anything else. That's it. And that is why.
When was this article written, Benny?
Excuse me?
When was this article published?
The one I'm looking at right now, and I'll show you, was published on. This was in the Review Journal, dated January 30th, 2017. Here.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Is the NFL resolved its gambling situation? Because I was wondering, is it possible that they didn't want a...
Well, they didn't. I mean, I know where you're going with that, and I can answer it ahead of time. They didn't. And in terms of how it's been resolved, basically the courts have said that they can do sponsorships, sports sponsorships via gambling. So you have, for example, Caesars Entertainment. But in terms of an organization owning, that's still not something that's allowed.
Now, could that be the reason why they didn't allow the Adelson money to go through?
It is. It's the whole reason for everything.
Yeah.
Look, that's why I felt, and there's still part of me that feels that the whole Adelson dust-up was a trick. And because if Adelson had stepped in, all right, if Adelson had stepped in and said, "Hey, look, I'm a partner here with Davis. We're going to put in X amount of money," that would send a direct signal that gambling was involved in ownership, and they would have lost. They would not have been granted relocation rights. That would not have happened. But since two things happened. First of all, the Nevada legislature stepped forward and pony up $750 million. I had Bruce Allen on an email, who's Redskins GM, railing me about, "Zenny, public money still matters. You can't do this the way you're suggesting it. We just don't want it that way. We want public money." Okay? And Bruce Allen is NFL royalty. So when you have Bruce Allen telling you that, he represents how the league thinks. The league wants public money. Straight up. And so here Mark comes along and he gets a king's ransom. And so they're all like, "Wow, you did it." Okay? So that's the first shoe to drop. The second shoe to drop was he got Adelson out of the way. Now that's why I think, and then he got the vote. Okay? So that's why I think there's a part of me that still thinks this was engineered. A part of me. All right? A part of me. Now, if it was engineered by Davis, where he drafted this document knowing that he couldn't have Adelson in it, and Adelson walked, well then, from Davis' perspective, he won either way. In other words, if he could always turn around the league and say, "Look, this doesn't involve Adelson. See this paper?" And he would have gotten the votes. And Adelson would have figured out he was screwed after the NFL vote, right? Instead, he figured out he was screwed before the NFL vote, but it didn't matter. He got the vote anyway. So he took a huge risk. And the question is, How is this going to impact him at the back end? And the answer is we're beginning to see the seeds of where this might go with this money that they need to complete these funding gaps that exist because they haven't fulfilled all of their own sponsorship objectives. Okay, so that answers the question right there. And make sure you get your comments. Ryan Abbott says in Vegas, a dome stadium doesn't make sense. That's neither here nor there. Eric Powell says should have been a retractable roof. Ryan Abbott says how does Bank of America have that kind of capital? Are you kidding me? At any rate, I mean, I can't. I mean, did someone just answer? Oh, well, okay. Eric Powell answers. He goes, Bank of America has around $240 billion in capital, largest bank in the United States. Wow. Wright Abbott says the A's Raiders would legalize gambling like it is now on that property of public transportation. They didn't have legalized gambling then. And well, if you're trying to say, Wright Abbott, that that legalized gambling would have worked at the Coliseum, I say, yeah, it would have. And I think the Raiders would have done better staying in Oakland. And yet this opens up a large opportunity for any other team. Staying in Oakland, building a stadium there, and having the twin benefit of a well-financed tech community, although arguably there's a bubble, but a well-financed tech community, and a growing sponsorship, a growing sports, a growing sports gambling industry. So you put those two together, I can't think of a better place to be than the Bay Area.
Yeah, you could have had Google Stadium.
Google, Apple, Facebook, any combination. The opportunities to create a really cool stadium of the future rowing tech were missed. They're there. I mean, look what the Warriors have done. The Warriors gained $2 billion in sponsorships from tech. And the A's stand to gain at least $1.5 billion for that crown jewel of a stadium they're going to build at Howard Terminal. Okay? And I want to say something else on that note. The A's are going to get $1.4 billion from the city of Oakland through tax increment financing. Anybody who tells you that the A's are not getting any money from the city of Oakland should be laughed at, because that immediately should tell you they don't know the deal. They haven't read California Senate Bill 293, infrastructure financing. It specifically points at Howard Terminal. If you want to consider yourself well-educated on the subject, you need to read that bill line item by line item and know it chapter and verse. If you don't, you have no idea what you're talking about. And anybody around the country who says that the A's are laughing at Oakland because Oakland can't afford X and Y, that's your first signal that the person saying that has zero idea what they're talking about. I don't care if it's the commissioner of baseball, because if the commissioner of baseball is putting out that idea, there's two possible tracks. Either he really doesn't know what he's talking about, or he doesn't want people to know, for political reasons, that the city of Oakland is about to cough up that level of money. That's about what is being looked at. And for a very simple reason. When you do tax increment financing, I've explained this before and I'll explain it again, you have a base year. And the calculation is your base year of assessed value, and then you minus the year next is subtracted from the base year. So if this is 1 minus 0, that's 1. That's 1 times the tax rate. That's your first year of revenue for tax increment financing, and then so on. Okay? So imagine your base year of assessed value is a baseball stadium at $1.5 billion. And then you've got an additional $500 million of development you're adding to it. So you have $2 billion as your base, right? And then you start increasing that value by 4% per year over a 40-year period, you come up with $1 billion. Okay, and then you take 1% of that increment each year. That's $1,400,000,000, folks. Do the calculation yourself. So I'm not talking about a guess. And then the way Senate Bill 293 is written, the city of Oakland is developing what will be the most powerful redevelopment agency since the original one developed in '68. And they'll be able to use part of that money anywhere they want to in the city of Oakland. It's right there in black and white. For affordable housing, infrastructure improvements, you get the idea. So looking at the A Stadium as the goose that laid the golden egg. But they're not telling people about it. And when I bring this up with city officials, well, we need to have a private discussion about that. Why? Why?
Well, anytime you're using public funds, it should never be private.
Right. But there are reasons they don't want this known. And, my point is they just tell the truth. It's either they're going to pay the public now in terms of telling the truth or pay them later. Might as well do it now. But it's irresponsible for the media to go out and trumpet this pap. There's a lot of that going on anyway. To trumpet that pap. Because, look, this sucker's got a lot of money behind it. And then they turn around and they let the A's have the Coliseum and start talking about tearing down the Coliseum, which should be on the National Register of Historic Places. If you say you care about Raider Nation and you care about Oakland and you want to preserve the name and colors and everything, then why not the Coliseum itself? That's what I don't understand. And it doesn't mean the Coliseum can't be refurbished. It can be. You can look at Soldiers Field. You can refurbish a property.
Or look at my neck of the woods, the LA Coliseum.
Yeah, or the Mercedes-Benz Superdome where the Saints play. Completely rebuilt, for the most part, after Hurricane Katrina. On the National Register of Historic Places. So if you can do it with a Superdome, you sure as heck can do it with a Coliseum in Oakland. And still come out with a great new stadium, but maintains the cool aspects of the first stadium and then upgrades it. We were already on our way to doing that when we brought the Raiders back. Okay? So, there's all kinds of ways politically to get around that. So, there's a lot of misinformation around. Jisman Dias 714, how you doing? Ryan Abbott says, I'm saying a joint effort of A's, Raiders, possibly Warriors would have made financial sense. And Ryan, that's correct. That was the initial intent. But Joe Lacob didn't feel that, and I have to say, I think Joe was right on this. The late San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee was very aggressive. I also might add, he was a client of mine back in '92. Was very aggressive in a way that Jean Quan wasn't. And Jean Quan told me, of all places, she told me at the Alice B. Toklas Democratic Club breakfast of 2011, she told me that she said she didn't understand how popular the Warriors were to Oaklanders. Not that she didn't agree with it. It was just took her by surprise. Okay. And I was just floored. I thought, what? So, Dupree says, do you think Oakland will ever get an NFL team again? I would say, I used to say, yeah, but given the way Oakland is changing, I'm not so sure. The opportunity is certainly there, but Oakland.
Do you think it would be heartbreaking to get a team for Oakland? Like, for example, they're so entrenched in Oakland, and to have another team there, do you think the fans there would be hesitant to follow another team since Even though the team left, they're going to still be wanting the Raiders back.
No, I think. Look, I walked into the Athletic, which is a great restaurant and bar on Grand Avenue in Webster in Oakland, downtown Oakland, uptown Oakland area, when the 49ers won Sunday Night Football earlier this year. And they blew out, they're blowing out, who was they blowing out? Cowboys? Anyway, they were blowing out, I think it was the Cowboys, blowing them out of the stadium. And that place was full of Niners fans. And I interviewed the manager, and I said, so what do you think this says about the Raiders leaving? Do people care? And the guy said to me, I'm not a Raider fan. I'm not from here. I don't care. He's the manager. So I'm seeing
the
Oakland.
Gentrification of Oakland, you think?
Yeah, the gentrification of Oakland has brought in people from other parts of the country who in another time would never have settled in Oakland for reasons of race and class. It's the same thing now, but it's different. And they don't come with the same allegiances in terms of sports. So some of them are people who would in the past only maybe grew up in the West Bay and would only live in the West Bay, but now they live in Oakland. Some of them work in Oakland. There's a combination. But the point that I'm making is that group of people that would only embrace the Raiders and nothing else has dwindled. Okay, that's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm telling you. Now the question is there still a market for that kind of Raider fan? If you can build a stadium that doesn't have the cost envelope the Vegas stadium does, because look, you're going to have a gigantic number, I don't care what anybody says, of disaffected Raider fans because of that price tag. You heard about Violator. Mm-hmm. He's just one big example, okay? They're going to need a home. They're going to need a home. And so there exists an opportunity to capture them to some degree. I think the indoor football league will do it to a small degree, but there's a bigger opportunity. It's going to be pretty obvious within about 2 years that market exists. It's going to just sit there and it's going to wait to be captured. And there's some of the same people that would put their money in a sports book and also football if the football was affordable. Think of being able to go to a sports book and legally gamble on your favorite sports team and then go to your favorite sports team's events for coin that doesn't cost a lot. That market is emerging. The trouble is no one's taking advantage of it yet. So Ryan Abbott says, John Mark says, expansion for Oakland Raiders. And John Powell says, never is a long time, which is true. Sir Dilly says, the Raiders have a surprisingly good chance of making the playoffs. Texans beat Titans. And then he says, people that don't follow sports don't understand sports, like the city or county members' sports. What do I care? They don't understand. Good point. And then he says, owner of the Jaguars is going to buy Wembley Stadium, said Khan. They pulled out. Shot Khan. John Marks asks, does anyone remember Joseph P. Bort? Yes, I do. Joe Bort, the guy who told no deal the Raiders in Oakland. Yeah, I remember Joe Bort. Dupree Lattimore says, I've spoken to a few people in Las Vegas, and they don't really care about the Raiders coming to Vegas. No, they don't. They don't. Hey, folks, it is 8 minutes to 2. I'm going to start winding down. Hope everybody's ready for Christmas. I'll be back tomorrow. And quite excited for Christmas. Today's... You know, I haven't seen It's a Wonderful Life. Joseph, you still there? Or did you fall asleep?
Yes, I am.
Oh. What's your favorite
No, I'm listening.
What's your favorite Christmas movie?
Well, you hit it right on the head. It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
That is such a great movie.
Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life.
A little trivia, that movie didn't make any money when it first came out, and it wasn't supposed to be a Christmas movie.
Is that right?
Over the years, it has become a Christmas movie. With Jimmy Stewart in an interview with Johnny Carson in the '90s had stated. I just saw the recent interview again on YouTube. That's why I can say this. And he said that initially when it came out, it wasn't a huge success, and that initially they were surprised that it ended up being associated with Christmas.
Interesting. Oh, Ryan Abbott.
So that's a little bit of trivia.
Ryan Abbott asked, does Oakland have boosters or investors like USC? Yes. Something else, too, for those of you who might be wondering, and if you go to oaklandnewsnow.com, if you haven't read my article on the whistleblower story, you should, because I'm about to add to it, because I have photographs. And, violators retiring. But he's not the only one. Okay? Not everyone.
Well, I didn't know he was from LA. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that at all. Okay?
Yeah, because he said that he got outpriced by the Vegas stadium, but I was like, it's pretty expensive for him to go every game to Oakland from LA. So I was surprised that he made that statement in an article that I read.
Well, he's not the only one, and a lot of people have told me they're not going to go. I've talked to people. I talked to a person just last Raider game I went to. He's got seats. The whole row of people that were at the Raider game I was at. This is section 212, row 9. They, longtime season ticket holders, they're not going. Okay, so the Raiders have that problem, and the Raiders have done. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. They've done a very good job of basically telling the fan base, hey, we don't want you. We're creating a new one. And that's exactly what they're going to get. But the new fan base they attract is going to be much smaller than what they had in Oakland. It's not going to be the same. In Raider fans that go to Vegas expecting to get love, they're not going to get that. They're going to get something they've never experienced before. They're going to be treated like a commodity.
Yeah.
They're not going to like it. They're going to come back complaining. Watch. Okay? And I don't care what anyone says. That's the fate that awaits them. You know, it's just sad.
Well, like you said, Don Webb made that comment. They want to restructure the Raider fandom, the Raider fan base.
It was yeah. He said this 2017 September. All right, guys, I'm out. Thanks, Joseph. See ya, and happy birthday.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
See you guys later. And Merry Christmas. And Happy Hanukkah.